right, cool. I think Lance, what we'd like to do, you're like the first, not really the first, but you're kind of the first new one where we just try to capture your story for people. And so we'll try to pick out some of the common things we want to hear regarding every ecosystem. And then there'll be some stuff that comes out of your story that John, Taylor, and I will just try to key in on and maybe spend the last half hour just talking a little bit deeper about some stuff. We'll figure out what that is later. How's that?
Yeah, I'd love that. And I'd also just, I don't know if it's part of the script and it doesn't have to be, but I'd love to know, I don't know John or Taylor at all. So I'd love to hear who they are too, if that's possible.
Yeah, well, we're all tired of their story, so you don't get
Cool. That's fine.
Now, just a brief, John is in Florida. It was, we'll call it loosely associated with Underground Network in Tampa. Doing,
Well, he was like one of the founders.
oh, you were a founder, huh? And then they kicked your butt out.
Well, okay, so I can tell you, yeah, so I'm down in Tampa, Florida. I was part of that crew that the underground grew out of, that kind of early house, like part of the first house church. And then, yeah, was part of that over time. What ended up really happening was my work. I work mostly with the homeless originally. Like a lot of what we've built as an ecosystem really grew out of like walking with and learning from folks on the streets. But as that, I mean, it kind of is what the underground set out to do, is to incubate and set off. So we ended up spinning off our own organization. And so, I'm with them, or I'm like, let's say I'm part of them in the way that like my grandma is my grandma, like we're family, we're in the same city, but organizationally we've spun off and kind of moved out of mom and dad's house, so to speak.
Okay. I love Florida, man. I mean, the first time I was ever there, I pulled up on a little tiny pond in the middle of the city, and it was at nighttime, and we put night vision on, and there was gator eyes staring at us. We were in the middle of the city. We couldn't believe it. So it's a real thing. If there's water in Florida, don't go in it.
Oh, you can go in it. It's fine.
Very true.
Really?
They don't want nothing to do with you.
Yeah, that's bull crap, bro.
Yeah. I'm not doing it, man. I just toured a swamp and we saw like a 12-foot gator in there. I was like, there's no way I'm doing that.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be going in the swamp either, though. Well, I know I'm excited to hear your story, man. This is good. I'm glad we got you on, and and it's kind of a cool thing to go in and be like, man, we haven't connected yet. This will be a cool kind of, I don't know. You hadn't told me much about you either. I'm like, let's go. Let's hear about it. Taylor, why don't you do the same thing, man? Why don't you give a brief introduction and we can just dig into it.
Yeah, what's up, Lance? I don't know. What do I say? The story's so long. Like, I've just been doing what we're doing right now, Lance, for about 15 years. And over that period of time, I went from traditional ministry, serving on staff at a church kind of thing, paid to play music and pastor college and young adults. Left that, moved into downtown inner city Birmingham, left that and came here. And from in that thread, we kind of focused on how the restoration of the family in poor communities, education and economics could kind of build a kingdom ecosystem. So we call it having intentional homes, benevolent businesses, and justice works all throughout an ecosystem of people doing life together. But really, it's just been one big experiment, dropping chemicals in beakers over and over and over, year after year, to see what works, what doesn't. Most doesn't work because we're fighting against such a pervasive Babylonian power that in both the affluent and impoverished cultures is, feels like a constant battle. So,
by the way, Lance has read the Brave City manuscript, so
okay. Yeah.
I
So
was gonna
that,
say I did get to know you a little bit through that. So
yeah, but it's
cool.
all been trial and error. And I kind of feel like that's what my whole life will be, is just kind of trial and error, mostly error.
Yeah, Lance. So John is running all, like, as the Brave Cities Network builds out, John will be running all the podcasts and kind of content stuff. So he'll be kind of the mainstay on these webinars and that type of thing. And Taylor is where I got my cues from. So when we got the Alton story going, Taylor's network in Birmingham was like the primary sort of coaching network for us. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background. And by the way, you can ask us anything, but we'll try to focus on you. So
Sure.
how about I just kick us off? Is that okay, John?
Yeah.
Yes, please do. Yep.
So hey, good morning, John.
Good morning.
Lance. We've got Lance Linderman from Phoenix area, more specifically the Peoria area of Phoenix. And I got a privilege today. What we're trying to do with a lot of the Great Page is not just give them insight into kind of unique nuances of building kingdom ecosystems, but we mostly want to highlight what people are doing with this stuff all over the world. And so, Lance, you're one of the first ones we're interviewing. And I got to see your story once. So, but you and I go quite a bit further back, way back, kind of in church planting days. And so we reconnected last year. And when I was down there, I just was kind of blown away, honestly. I came back and told Taylor, like, this is a legit network that's been going very, very strong on the business side, which, mostly it looked like was you, a lot of your entrepreneurial efforts. And I want you to kind of to share that, how that went on, but you're also very connected to your twin brother. And,
Yeah.
And he's been more on, it's like when I try to explain you guys to other people, I say, there's one brother that is prolific with the business development. And there's one brother that really has a passion for what we would call more of the spiritual formation piece of it. You guys actually have a church gathering, which some of the ecosystems do not. So you guys do.
Yep.
So I should have just worked with my brother.
Totally. Yeah, actually. Yeah. If he'd moved to Alton, but doubt that's going to happen. So give us a quick little, like, 5-minute, how you got from the early days of kind of church plant stuff to how'd you get into Peoria, number one? How'd you get into the business development? And just give us like the overarching story, and then I want to pick it apart a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, I don't even know what year it would have been, but this would have been Tangible Kingdom time. And I know a lot of people probably connected to you guys or through that. And I'm assuming Hugh, you might be
we think it was hundreds of millions of people connected through that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so somewhere along in there, I mean, we were planting a church out of what you could call a traditional Sunday model. And they gave us some great autonomy to do it our way. And I come from a traveling musician background. My brother and I were in a band for a long time. We were signed and touring for straight out of high school into our 20s. And so we went from that into church planning when that all ended, or really running a college ministry, planted out of the church into our own church. But we started as missional communities, and we were lucky to be able to start at zero as missional communities. One space or home grew into 4 or 5 homes, and there became a need for us to get together on a regular basis. We started off monthly doing that and scheduling barbecues and things like that. Eventually, though, we felt a space on a Sunday could serve us well, but we wanted to do it in a way that was unique. And for us, what that looked like was moving into downtown Peoria, which is, dreams go to die there. It's been a ghost town for 30 years, nothing happening down there whatsoever. We bought land and started to build, and we said the building was going to be bricks, not bones. You guys have probably heard, or sorry, bones, not bricks, so we didn't put the word church on it. The entire space was modular. If there's a cross on the wall, it could come off. The space would really be for anyone. It could be, you could say it's a lot like a post commons kind of space. There happens to be enough space for people to gather there. But yes, we have government meetings there, other religious groups there. We have concerts there. We serve alcohol there, the whole nine. But on top of that, we also wanted to have a for-profit business attached to it. And so that's when my split from being in ministry, because I was one of the planting pastors, moved into more of the entrepreneurial end. And I opened a coffee shop, for-profit coffee shop. Wanted anybody to be able to work there, gay, straight, any religious background. And we also, we're like, look, there's going to be cuss words on the radio, radio, that sounds like so, it wasn't the radio, but the sound system, all that. It's really going to be a space that really just feels like any other kind of community space. And that's called Driftwood. So that was the beginning of.
What's it called?
It's called Driftwood Coffee. I've been a big specialty coffee guy for a long time, and it's been a passion of mine for a long time. And I had a business prior to this. It was in screen printing and graphic design. I let go of that. Sorry, there's a large cement truck rolling up. It'll take a second to pass by. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we started Driftwood, and Driftwood became an amazing door for people to find and discover our community and the people in our community. And one of the benefits that we realized by planning a for-profit, or by planning a church alongside of with a for-profit coffee shop in the front, was that from the business end, my risk was mitigated by having a community of people that wanted to support what we were doing. On their end, the cost of doing church was also brought down because we were paying rent for these places. So there were some kind of natural benefits to doing it that way.
Hey, Lance, real
However,
quick, can I ask, did the coffee shop start first, or did the church space? Because it's connected. So if people can't quite figure out, it's actually kind of a connected building. On the side, you enter the coffee shop, you go around back, and then that would be like the church entrance. Was it simultaneous, or did you stagger them?
It opened at the same time. We opened like on a Monday, and then we were having church service in the venue space next to it on Sunday. And still doing our missional communities, and still doing our spiritual cohorts, which was another part of kind of the model of our church, where we get the spiritual formation. We've been sending people to go hug trees for as long as I can remember. That's been a big part of what we do. And then recently opened up a play yard for the community, because there's no playgrounds for all the kids in the area, which is now visited by the community. And now opening up a container park across the street, which will have 6 restaurants, 4 retail spots, a splash pad in the middle, the whole nine. So we're doing that right now. And then and Hugh knows, I've got some other restaurants and bars, and then my main business is actually a publishing company. But all that came from a coffee shop. 6 years ago, I was still scrounging for change for Jack in the Box tacos, and my wife gave me my first $1,000 to kind of go invest in a business, and it all kind of took off from there.
All right. So we'll get into a lot, Lance, but just, I want to kind of start by saying, one of the issues with kingdom economics across the board is the tension that comes with money, and what to do with money, how to use money, how to view bottom lines, all that kind of stuff. We can break that down, but I think anybody who's been in these conversations understands what I mean. The first thing I want to ask you is, how the hell did you make money from a coffee shop?
I didn't. We're actually just now starting to make money. So the coffee shop started about 7 years ago. I was still buying Jack in the Box tacos 5 years ago. Now the coffee shop roasts for about 12 other accounts. So that's actually starting to finally.
So you're mainly making your money through roasting. That's been all of our stories as well. What else? But it sounds like in those 7 years, you've started 112 other businesses. So where did this money come from?
Well, one of the things that the coffee shop did was it allowed us to have cash flow, because it is, we do decent amount of sales, but the profit margins were great because we were doing specialty grade coffee and other things probably not the right way. So we did have cash flow, which gave us some ability to borrow in that sense, but also, it sounds dumb, and my wife's actually on the other side of the glass here. She got signed on as a nurse. They gave her a $10,000 signing bonus. I was like, babe, I got to do something else. I'm not making any money doing this. I might as well go back to work for the church. And, I was like, hey, if I could have $1,000, you could have $1,000, spend on whatever you want. I'm going to take my $1,000. And if I can turn it into more money, can I keep spending it? She's like, well, what are you going to buy? I was like, I'm going to go buy a whole bunch of comic books. And so I bought some comic books. I went into my garage, I was setting them all out and looking up prices. And it's a really weird story, but Hugh, did I show you the warehouse?
Yeah. That's a warehouse.
Yeah. So I basically noticed that on Instagram, there was, Cheeto fingered sweaty dudes posting photos of their books, and it was kind of weird and awkward. I thought I could photograph these books more beautifully. They're vintage books. They've got value. And I set up a camera, started photographing, and then started live streaming. And I remember sitting in my mom's kitchen showing a book, and all the people just started coming on and they started buying my books. And, a year later, 7 employees, $100,000 in sales a month.
Pictures or
huge.
selling comic books?
Selling comic books. In fact, there's people live streaming right now. Every 5 to 10 seconds, there's a book being sold.
Nice.
And their coffee roastery is in that same building. So you go in, you see a coffee roastery, and then you got the warehouse.
All right. So you're a creative, you know how to make money. You've kind of figured out, were you into comic books before this?
No, not really. I mean, I've always liked the artwork and the older books, and had bought a few at some auctions and stuff like that. But I'm more of an opportunist. My mind, when I have conversations, kind of sees a lot of angles and stuff, and I try to, as I meet with people, figure out where we can kind of connect and help one another. And somehow that worked out, and it's gone really, really well. And it moved into then an even kind of larger project. And now we own a publishing company that we've revived from the 60s and 70s. That is a bit of a household name. It's called Gold Key. If you guys were to do a Google search on Gold Key Comics, you would know the history. It's in the 70s, it was larger than Marvel and DC. It housed like all of Walt Disney and Star Trek and King Kong and Space Family Robinson and bunch of that stuff. So now we're working in kind of the Hollywood world as well, and working on movie things and all sorts of stuff. So it's getting weird over here for sure on the business.
I came back from this trip, and I told Cheryl, like people think that I'm entrepreneurial. I'm like, I'm an idiot compared to some of these cats that are doing this stuff. Like
I have a lot more questions, Lance, but I assume there's a little more to the story. I want to hear like your brother's side and how this all connected together. So keep going.
Yeah. So, all throughout I've battled, you touched on this a little bit earlier, the tension of, what it means to run businesses and be kingdom oriented. We continue to lead a missional community in our home. We continue to lead training for people that want to do similar things in our area. We continue to try to pioneer and innovate and dream and have an imagination. But it hasn't been easy figuring it out, how to have money, what to do with it. I remember when we first moved to the suburbs, I was mowing my lawn and saw other people mowing their lawns, and I just thought, what the hell am I doing? This feels so weird. And I was used to living in a downtown kind of U-shaped building that all of our neighbors could come in and hang out. And so I'm still trying to figure out, my wife and I, how to dream together in this world, what it all looks like. But I would say about half the companies that we have are intentionally to become a door or a community place where we really go and we love on it. So in our neighborhood, you got to go there. We have There was a bar that had been shut down for a few years, and we heard from the neighbors, everybody missed it. So we opened a bar there, and that's become like ground zero for me these days, to meet people, share my story, talk to them. And these guys, they're so open to it, to having a conversation about God. So many of them are actually already even believers, but they're maybe just kind of like on a different path or
By the way,
side.
when he's saying a neighborhood bar, this is one of the crappier bars I've ever seen. And you didn't like fix it up. You just left it like the way that it was for the neighborhood. You just took it over and made it something. So I remember being pretty impressed with, you didn't try to like make it all highfalutin. It's just like, it's a people's bar.
Did we talk about, I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but that night, do you remember there was a guy that came in that was sweaty and looked like he was on drugs, maybe, but do you remember that?
I thought most of the people there looked like that. So
So we were hosting all of our like homies, come meet Hugh, man. He's the coolest dude ever. You got to meet him. And some of the elders and some from our church up there, and this guy kind of walked in and included themselves in the conversation, and he was making the girls feel really uncomfortable. He was noticeably nervous, dirty, sweaty, and he was asking us to buy him drinks. And I was thinking, I just asked him, I was like, hey man, like, are you high right now? Like, are you on drugs? You're kind of coming off a little awkward, and it was making and he was like, no, and he got kind of embarrassed and he left. And I felt so bad. And leaving that, I was like, man, I just listened to Hugh talk about this, what he's doing in Alton and having a space for everybody. And like, I should know this. I've done the missional thing for a long time. I ended up going back outside and finding him. And somebody made the comment, I think it was you joked like, hey, did you have to exercise the spirit out of him, or what were you doing out there? But I ended up going up to him and was like, hey man, I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean to like push you out. I just could tell that you were really distressed. And also, I could tell you have a lot of pain, man. Can I pray for you? And he just sunk his head into my chest and started weeping on me right there, the same night he was there. And it's just a great reminder that God is so ready to move wherever we are. It doesn't have to be in a church building. You don't have to have the money to have those kind of programs to do this. And that guy probably needs it more than most. So anyways, I don't know if I got off tangent there, but
I just thought the dude was an Assembly of God pastor. So I'm sorry.
Oh,
that's
geez.
A joke. Okay. That's just an underhanded Brave City joke. Okay. So keep going. So you got the coffee shop, you got the comic thing, you got the coffee roastery. Then you took me to this little hot chicken joint. Tell me why remind me why you started that thing.
Yeah, so Twist Hot Chicken. So in the West Valley, like west of the I-17, if you're familiar with the Phoenix area, the movers, shakers, and graders they all would say they don't do the West Side. They don't move their concepts over there. So for a long time, I've been trying to kind of champion bringing things out to the West Valley. Sometimes the locations, though, are limited, and you kind of have to run with what you get. So I wanted to bring in a hot chicken joint. This is a few years back, and it was the only spot that opened up. So, and there was actually a failing business at the time in there, and it was helpful for us to just kind of come in and take over the lease and do some remodel. So that's why we ended up there. And sorry, I'm outside. It's like freezing where I'm at. Trying to keep it together with my so if I'm shaky or quick, it's because I'm a little bit cold.
Nice to know you're freezing in Phoenix. That's great.
Blythe, California. But yeah, we're in the desert somewhere.
So Lance, tie it to your brother real quick.
Yeah, so full circle. So my brother, he was the planting pastor at Axiom, is the name of the church body. And together as we planted the church, we both shared the same dream. He just continued to pastor and do the Sunday thing, but also do the missional communities and kind of lead the church. Because our church does, there's a body there. There's, about 300 people, and we weren't just going to like abandon them and what we were doing. So he's continued to kind of lead that front. However, he does run, he's one of the owners of the bar with me. He also has a mid-century kind of furniture spots. I think he's a little bit entrepreneurial himself. And then him and I have a company that we've started recently in the last years. We've started to put together more of the business end of it in ministry it's called Banquet. And it's just based on like what you guys, have read in the scriptures, that like we just realized that churches weren't very good at creating spaces for everybody, but the business world and hospitality world is. So we now have a company called Banquet that's helping other ministries, now one in San Francisco, one in Kansas City, and then one here in Phoenix, to plant in partnership with somewhat of an ecosystem already set up, so similar to kind of what we did. So now we're working on multiple projects where people are doing kind of church ministry, community, and business all kind of together. I'll be in Bakersfield next month with a church, kind of figuring out some of that stuff as well. So,
Okay. John, what you thinking?
That's a lot, man. So,
and please,
good.
I will take correction and I will submit. Like, you guys, Hugh's the teacher, man. So if I'm doing something wrong, let me know. I don't have it figured out, and we're still learning the language ourselves. So
There's a lot of misnomers out there in the world. That's one of the bigger ones right there. No, Lance, by the way, you guys started this how many years ago? So how long have you been going?
well, we just celebrated like our official 10 years as an Axiom body or church, but there was, a few years before that where we were developing philosophy and training, and learning from you and others.
Lance, let me just kind of go right in for the jugular and walk us. So let's talk about this in these conversations. And you've read Brave Cities, at least the manuscript, right?
Most of it, not all
Most
of it.
but you got the idea. It wasn't interesting enough to read all of it, but you got the idea.
No, man, I'm taking on the cruises with you. I'm still going.
Okay, so the classic question for me always is, and has been since 2010, what's different about this that I'm doing, or that we're doing, or that you're doing, or that John's doing? Like, when we look at, and I'm trying to set this up really well for you, tee you up well, but when we look at the scriptures and the story of God, God's people, the city of God, the idea of from Eden to New Jerusalem, it's always been about a city. It's always been about an ecosystem. So you've heard of the concept business as mission, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, basically business as mission is kind of summarized in this, to me, really compartmentalized way of thinking of, I'm going to be a Christian business owner and I'm going to be like a missionary in my business space. Where we challenge that idea is to more kind of frame it as the business is the mission. And so my business is my table that I set for seekers, for people that live in the ecosystem, for anyone to come and sit and to encounter Jesus. I said to John and Hugh on one of our podcasts recently, I said, making disciples is building kingdom ecosystems. And we're going to talk about that soon, but the framing of that idea is the phrase architecture, or what is it, guys?
Archaeology,
artistry, and architecture, right?
Chapter 2, right?
What's that?
I think it was Act 2 in your book, right? Or was that?
That's right.
1?
Yeah.
Yep.
So stay with me, because this is how I ask questions, and it's annoying, but this is really important, because I don't want this podcast to turn into like, oh yeah, cool, find an entrepreneurial guy who loves Jesus and will go out on the street and reconnect with a homeless drug addict that he just kicked out of his bar. Even though that's a beautiful story, And it really is, Lance. I know if Hugh comes back raving about you guys, there's more to it than that. And so the archaeology, artistry, and architecture concept is we're literally observing what God has been doing for millennia in this region, in this soil, in this people. And then we're beginning to dream with him of how we can uncover what's already here and then architect the new and fresh, or resurrect is a great idea of the bar that you had or that you're running now. Okay, so here's where I'll kind of finish up is I can go start a business, right? Tomorrow I can get a little money, start a car wash or a barber shop and love people there. And it'd be a good thing. And I truly believe God can be pleased. People can be blessed and the world can be made a little better. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a city within a city, where we are incarnating the ways of Jesus in everything that we do, all the drinks we make, all the houses we build, all the people that we hire, how we spend and save and budget our money, everything. So with all of that information in mind, I just want to kind of ask, because I didn't want to set you up for failure. I want to say, like, how does that make you feel? And you're doing so much cutting edge entrepreneurial work within a kingdom movement that's actually making money. I don't understand that. I almost don't believe you. So like, how is that challenging you at all, what I'm saying? And how is what you're doing different than just business as mission?
Well, some of, and this is, this has been, there's a lot to that. This has been
Take your time.
process. Yeah. So, I mean, even this year, there's businesses that I'm a part of that even now I'm going, God, is this really part of it? And there's, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder by people that want me to go and do something. And my natural self is like, ooh, opportunity, let's go. But I've had to say no more and more. All I could say is that every one of the businesses that falls under my umbrella that I have kind of the lead role in is all subject to a whole list of kind of like what I'll call laws or, I haven't written a book about it yet, so I haven't formalized the language for it. But when we partner with somebody, there's an assessment on what kind of ministry are we doing here. So it very much is a ministry for me, or a church, as you say. But just most of the members are not Christians, or yet, believers. But we still do retreats and are pushing people towards retreats and spiritual formation and discipleship and all those measures and everything we do. The difference would be like, you could open up a Chick-fil-A and hang a banner and say, this is a Christian place or something like that. We don't hold that banner at all. Like for us, I mean, we kind of go in more like in the ninja sense, or we're kind of more in the shadows of it. But
yeah.
And maybe I'm missing that a little bit here. And because I think our community, we've involved our community of 300 people or so much into the businesses we have too. I think that maybe I'm still holding on to a little bit of what you guys have let go of. And I'm still trying to kind of like figure that out. But it is working. We're in process, and it's, I don't see a large future. And from reading your guys' book, there's some rough points in there. But the traditional model of churches, and you guys are aware of this, it's something I'm seeing less and less of. And I sit on a board for the Mennonite Brethren. I'm an Anabaptist guy.
Right on.
Of their church planting And it's, I mean, I could get in trouble for saying this, but it's scary. I mean, I don't even know what these churches are doing anymore. I don't think they do it. And there's so much struggle, so much fallout, so much of like, what is this? You know, like, and it's very hard for me to be on that board and champion a lot of what's going on. When I'm like, guys, there's another way. There's new ways. We can let go of the building. We can let go of the building. Let's go figure it out a different way.
Yeah.
So I am still figuring out how. But I'm in complete agreement. Like, I have this idea that in the vision in my brain right now is like, I want to see pastors and entrepreneurs sitting together in my backyard while we barbecue, and we're saying, hey guys, how do we come together and hold all these components together and move forward together? And I think that's going to spark a lot, and it is sparking a lot. I talked to Barclay, who you got me in touch with. He's like transitioning out of the traditional pastoral role into owning a bar, you know, and I think this is what the church is going to look like moving forward. And we're seeing it, and we're giving sermons in our bar. It's happened now at this point on accident, by the way, like not even planned, you know? And so,
I will, Lance, tell the people that are listening, like you took me in the back room of the hot chicken joint, which is basically just a kiosk. It's almost like a high school, college hangout, you know, like there's nothing special, but going in there, you could tell that was a unique little family. Like, you were close with the employees. So it's like a very unique little table of people. When you took me to the high-end hamburger joint over by the stadium, which I know costs you a ton of money every month, you know, to keep that place alive, because it's much more highfalutin. But even that, you know, I meet your bartender and it's a real story. Like, in every little spot you've created, these are little mini churches, if you will. And I know some of them might end up at your church gathering on Sunday, but a lot of them don't. That's, you know, like, but there is a opportunity for all of them to kind of swim together in your ecosystem. So I didn't sense anything like where I would change it. I just thought everything was beautiful.
Yeah. And the only place I would just differentiate is that I would say now that very much so the coffee shop and the bar especially are an extension of, you know, the walls of the church. So, you know, even if they don't go on Sunday, being at the bar is a part of our whole experience.
Yeah.
So, and in our houses, of course.
You know what it feels like to me, and I'm kind of saying this to pass you the ball a little bit, John, but just hearing you talk, Lance, you should be like, I don't know, really proud or really encouraged right now. I don't know how much, this is going to sound like a kooky example, but I don't know how much you guys know about the kind of church traditional story of Enoch and how he was viewed as a prophet and how he was always talking about things to come. There's not a lot in the kind of westernized canon about him, but there's a lot in church history about him. But he didn't really he wasn't really doing a whole lot. He was saying a lot. I would say we'd try to do, but you more seem like Noah to me. Like, you're just building and you're not 100% sure why. But I feel like we want to tell you, like, hey, what you're doing is actually going to be an arc for people before you realize it. And that's kind of why I'm pushing this idea right now, is because I think most people, and your popularity might even grow in evangelicalism because what you're doing seems very cutting edge and missional. I see it differently. I see it as necessary. I see a flood coming where the church as we know it is going to be decimated in some way, shape, or form, whether it's political or persecution or just economically. I don't know. And we've called what we do before ARC communities because we think that the people of God and seekers in general, which I would in some ways consider the people of God too, are going to look for refuge in these kingdom ecosystems. So don't hear my like challenge or my questions as saying you need to change anything or what you're doing isn't good. I think it's incredible. I don't want it to be co-opted by business as mission people. Oh, Lance is,
Yeah.
and he ministers to people at his bar. No, you can't have him. That's not what he's doing. He's building an ecosystem where people will and are and will find refuge in times to come when there is no refuge.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we're exploring more, and I thank you for that, it feels very encouraging, is also, I think it's really important. And I would say if there's any other church leaders or kingdom leaders that watch this or are listening to this, if you own a business, we have to better look at how to reorganize the assets and the structure of the business itself to serve, the greater church, the bride, or, the table that you're talking about. And I think that's going to be another area where there's an untapped resources. And so as churches less and less rely on the paychecks coming in from the congregants and more are finding out that the church is just already there at their house and in their business spaces. I think that learning how to share resources is going to be a big part of that. Something in what you said made me feel like I need to bring that up also. So that's something kind of looking.
Yeah, Lance. Hey, John, you got something? I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
All right. You made a comment that there might be some things in the book that were hard, right? We've just collected all the endorsements on the book, but we had one very prominent leader not want to endorse it because he said it was too arrogant.
Hey, by the way, I just want to jump in and say, I think that needs to be the endorsement that is on the book. Is an anti, like literally just take that and put that and no other on the back jacket of the book.
Well, that's not a bad idea, John, except I doubt they would give us permission to do that.
Well,
you just got to put. They already sent it. They already permission.
Well,
it's written.
You don't have to say their name. You just have to say
no, you have to say their name. You have to say their name.
A church,
Anyway,
so
sorry.
Go on. Being like we know, like there's probably 15 what we would call zingers in there and if you take any one of those, it could come across arrogant, like we figured this out. But I was talking to Taylor, like, when you're doing this type of work, you can't really get arrogant because it's very hard and nothing really feels like you're killing it. But I told him, I said, if I've ever come across arrogant, it had nothing to do with that pride or haughtiness. It had to do with anger. And like when you talked about what you're experiencing in your own tribe and how they're not picking up on the nuances that the culture and the Lord is asking us to pick up on, you can't help but be angry and kind of, hopefully it never comes off like arrogance. But I'm curious from you, what did you think in the book were some really hard things to grapple with, like that just stood out to you?
Well, I couldn't quote the exact phrases, but the big one and the one that I warned, I did share the manuscript with Mike.
The parental advisory on the front.
Well, I mean, Hugh's no stranger to pissing people off, that's for sure, or rubbing them the wrong way, or just being unorthodox in general. I should tell you guys, the first time I ever met him in public, what he did to me, it was wrong on many levels. But anyways, I'll let your imagination go there. Yeah, I mean, just one of the overarching sentiments that you guys are very clear on. It's just like some people might read it and have a little bit of, they might feel some guilt, and I don't think that's what you guys want. But for collecting a paycheck, you're very, very forward in it. Like, this is kind of where it's gone and doesn't need to have and include the money. And so I think that's going to be the big tension point from what I picked up. It's kind of the money. the money piece, but it's not wrong. And I don't think that it means that money can't be a part of the equation. I mean, I really hope, and you guys can pray for me if I'm not, I think I'm really trying to be and do what God's called me to do. And I have money, you know, but that model of putting all the weight on the congregation does create burnout. You guys also do a very good job of speaking to that. And you just say it. You're like, hey, even if you're doing it small, you're still burning out. We know it. Don't pretend you're not. And I think when I first read that, I thought, oh gosh, like I have to admit, even in Axiom, we sense that sometimes. And what is that spurring in me, you know, and how do we learn from this? And so it's a dangerous book. You know, you give it, put it in some church leaders' hands. They might go belly up, you know, and it'd probably be for good reasons.
This one gentleman that didn't want to endorse it, he said, you have written books that have helped us bridge from old forms to new forms before, right? So Tangible Kingdom might have been a bit of a bridge. And I said, yeah, I have to, you know, be honest with you. When Taylor and I were writing this, we did not want to, or we didn't think we could provide a bridge book. Like we actually felt like if churches try to take some of what we're saying and try to just keep what they have existing going and just add to the menu, we think some of the nuances will end up kind of fighting against each other. So and he actually said, he goes, that makes more sense. We said, we're really trying to write it to the Lance Lindermans out there that have been doing this, that just didn't know that what they're doing is legit. And we're really writing it to the 1%, hoping that the 1% potentially give a model for the next, you know, percentage. But that's why like you telling your story is so important. I think it's going to help people to go, oh, you actually can have church gatherings connected to business. And I think that doesn't come across as hard as just hearing something in a book.
Well, not only that, but it's going to be, for me, it's been very life-giving. For my family, it's been life-giving. The experiences are very different than, I'm not saying that God doesn't show up in a Sunday service, but the Sunday service comes with all sorts of people and ideas and, you know, how things should be or all that sort of stuff. And so, you know, I think my kids and my wife have a really beautiful view of what the church can look like now, or a better view of what the church can look like now. So other leaders, man, I couldn't encourage more to journey down this, push into this, because, you know, Sundays is only one tool in the shed, and it's not even the biggest tool, I don't think. So
if people ask you why you guys keep the Sunday thing going, because you're obviously busy with all the different stuff, what's your simple answer to why keep the Sunday thing as a part of the ecosystem?
I mean, everybody's different. The reason that we keep the Sunday going is because, and I don't know why this is. I haven't experienced it at any of the other, at very many churches. Honestly, I don't even know very many at all that I've experienced this at, but our Sunday gathering is full of non-believers, and they love it. And it's a very, very open table. So
it's just one of the tables, but it's an important table to those people.
It is for us. And you know, that's just where we're at now. And I think that's unique maybe for our experience, but we have a lot of, you know, the hot word is deconstructed, a lot of deconstructed pastors on one end, you know, but then a lot of just non-believers or gender transforming people or whatever, you know, like, and because of the relationship of the for-profit coffee shop and the bar and how much relational activity and discipleship is happening, we just have a large group of non-believers that are also now attending on Sunday, but in our homes too. And so we do have our missional communities still, and those are the only programs we have, just missional communities and Sunday. So that's why we haven't shut it down. And I still, you know, like there might even be a part of you guys that maybe misses. I think you even spoke to it in the book that sometimes you guys kind of and Hugh, we talked about this a little bit when you were in Phoenix, but you still miss, a good worship service from time to time, maybe, or maybe there's a
that
part
was
of
Taylor.
that unifying song when everybody's voices
Yeah.
are heard at once. There's still power in that, and my brother can drop a sermon sometimes, and it's like, all right, I'm into it. So I don't want to cut out all the fat there, but and we're still figuring it out. Is all I can say. So
I just thinking about, I mean, even back to this, we this was a great string of conversation here, but like back to this, and I think it really launched Hugh bringing up this, what do you call this, anti-endorsement or whatever, and this and I think you did a really good job speaking to the anger versus pride or haughtiness in this accusation of coming across arrogant. When I heard that, what came to mind initially was oh, whoever that was, is probably very pastoral. And even when I remember when I was reading through the manuscript going, this is prophetic, and a pastoral person will hate a lot of this, just out of and by the way, historically, this is you always kill the prophets. There's something there, in prophetic fire, anger, that really maps, I think. And anyway, the reason I'm saying all this is even coming back to the thing you're speaking to right now with a time together in prayer, or like you said, it's one tool in the shed. But what stands out to me is that what I see among what I'm hearing, you mentioned a park. You guys have a playground?
yeah.
And just in the community, in the neighborhood or something?
Yeah. Open on all ends to get in and out of. Just a really beautiful park. Misters, music going, trash can set up, sitting areas. It's a beautiful space.
And and you may or may not be familiar with this term, but there's this concept of social infrastructure, which parks are a great illustration of, and that's what a lot of these tables are. Exactly. It's where folks can gather, parks, libraries, but then also bars, coffee shops. And what you're doing is you're building out this social infrastructure kind of throughout in all of these places. And I would say what I'm hearing, and churches are that as well. Churches are these places that people can gather, the Sunday morning service kind of thing is also an element of social infrastructure where there's some rhythm of life. We come together in this place. A football game, the cookout could be that as well if it was on every Sunday or something. But I know, and perhaps it is just the explicit nature that's nice, where it's some of these conversations and the way of the kingdom is baked into everything you're doing, maybe in the coffee shop or in the bar, or in the chicken joint. But then it's at this Sunday service, or you also mentioned these spiritual formation retreats. There is where you have these explicit tables where you're yeah, this stuff's baked in everywhere. But then it's good to just, this is what even honestly, even these podcasts have been that for me a little bit personally, where, we're running these businesses and setting these tables, and often it's not as, let's explicitly talk about what we're doing here. And I think, while I'm not a big church sing-along guy, that's never been something I want to do. I do agree though. I wish I was cut out for it, because there is something about everyone doing the same. I mean, that's even physiologically true. You can measure it in a church service or a rave. When everyone's doing the same chant or the same dance, it affects you in your juices.
Well, how do you get to a place of maturity in your walk with God that you can be out of service and not be a cynic and still be an encourager? Because Jesus is in that room too.
For sure.
And although there's a lot that's wrong in my life, he's allowed me to have aha moments and open up to new mystery. And I think he just celebrates where you are. And so I still want to celebrate where the church is. And I don't want to demonize per se, but if we can be the change we want to see in those spaces too, we can start to spark and inspire and provoke new behavior, you know, and I think that's the story of God. He's been progressing us slowly. He's not forceful, and we're getting there. And, you know, prophetic people like
I had a call with a younger brother yesterday who's working through some life decisions and personality stuff and whatever. But one of the points on our call was me trying to emphasize to him to not allow shame or discouragement to be spoken over him for who he is and how he's made. And who he is and how he's made is he has a prophetic edge to him, which I'm piggybacking off of what you said, Lance. So stay with me. Which people who don't understand his paradigm or his spiritual genetic would be very quick to see him as a cynic, whereas he's more of a challenger. And when you begin to carry that yoke of, oh, I'm a cynic, it really defeats and deflates who God made you to be in certain spaces. And one other thought comes to mind is Hugh and I were having coffee with a buddy, an old friend of Hugh's and a fairly new friend of mine. And his daughter is a high level Division I soccer player. And in order to be that, anyone who's in the sports world knows now that she also had to be very involved in travel sports and in club soccer and in things like AAU programs. And it was funny to me how when we were talking, and she was there with us, and he's taking her to college for her, I guess, second year of soccer. And he said, "Oh yeah, youth sports are toxic now." And I that so stuck out to me in our conversation because I knew in that moment he had the wherewithal to recognize the toxicity of youth sports while still his other 3 children, I assume, are involved in youth sports. And he knows that right now it's the only pathway we have. And a lot of people would hear him and think of him as a hypocrite for recognizing the toxicity of youth sports, which I do as well, but still keeping his children involved in youth sports.
Yeah.
I see that as wise nuance and his ability to challenge what's in front of us and want something better while still not completely, you use the word demonize. But see, here's the problem with words like demonize is people confuse challenge with demonization. Like, for instance, in our book, we say repeatedly that a Sunday gathering or a worship gathering not only needs to be, or not only can be a table within your ecosystem, but needs to be. But a pastoral type will read this book and go, I feel like the Sunday service has been demonized. And the problem with that is the inability to recognize nuance and challenge as opposed to demonization and criticism or cynicism.
That's why I think this podcast in particular is going to save our butts a little bit, because we can just go, hey, if you feel like this is our posture, go listen to the story, because it's not just our thoughts. It's go listen to Lance's heart and your brother Gavin. You know, I mean, it's just like you guys are fantastic together. Just being with you guys together, it's obvious how much you guys love each other and how much you guys love the community and love anybody. And some people watching, you know, I joke with Taylor, like, we don't have the Gavin yet. Like, we're not developed as much or whatever. We haven't been led to, but we always process, like, I wonder when our Gavin's going to show up, you know? But that's important, because when you're building an ecosystem, you generally have one side or the other that's going to be operating a little bit quicker and cleaner.
Sure.
But, you know, when we're talking about Brave Cities being a church, then you have to develop that spiritual community in some form or fashion, or you're just a Christian business. And that's not what we're about. So I appreciate you telling your story, bro.
Yeah, thank you. And you said it perfectly there that when Banquet goes out and partners, it's not a Sunday driven church half the time. Half the time it's just some sort of pastoral or shepherding piece that happens to be a part of it. One of the groups we're doing it with, they just lead a spiritual direction center. But again, we see like God involved in that, and they're very thoughtful for the community. They're trying to take care of the poor. We're integrating that into the whole model of it. So that's important. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, if folks want to get a hold of you, do you want them to be able to or not?
Yeah. Anybody can get in touch with me. Absolutely.
How,
Absolutely.
give us some quick emails or website stuff that we can post on this podcast for you.
You know, I don't have like a formal, ministry page or anything like that. It's just, you can get a hold of me through the businesses, I guess. So if you just look up Driftwood Coffee or Easy Tiger Bar, or me personally on like Instagram, my tag is Sir Lance Anot, ANOT, which feels really goofy to say that like on a professional level. No, I'm gonna go change that soon.
No, it's perfect.
Love it.
But it's just me. There's no formalized anything there. But I'd love to talk, share, encourage, learn, the whole nine. And real quick, I need to get in touch with you soon here too, because we've already started building a year-long kind of thing, and we want part of that experience for people to come and learn from you guys. And so I'd like to chat with you guys more about that after, but I think what you guys are doing in Alton is really cool too.
Cool.
So,
Well, will you consider doing a Gray Pages for us that we'll load on the Brave City site? When you talked about sort of that little grid that you go through to think about whether or not to do a business or something, could you go ahead and put a little time into that and just create a little 1-2 pager? And that might really help people as they're thinking about it.
sure, absolutely. Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
So
Well-
we're coming to the close here, but I want to say just a couple things real quick, man. One, these guys have been on today, so I've kind of like been along for the ride, but I've got a bunch of notes here and was like, I have 75 questions for you. So I would either, if we could get you back at some point, maybe do a round 2 and double click on some of these things with you. Would love to do that. Or I just want to set up a time with you, man, because I've got questions about from top to bottom of all these things you rattled off. That was quite a bit of you've done quite a bit of work. Sounds like some really good work, and I want to double click on so many of those things. But really, really appreciate your time doing this with us, man.
Yeah, I would say both and
Good.
let's just connect and chat. And also, if you guys want me back on, I'd love to be here.
Enjoy
And
your
I could bring Mike and Gavin too if you guys
That'd
ever
be
want.
great.
They've
That'd be
got
awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. Go enjoy your time with your family.
Go
and,
warm up.
See ya.
All right.
Thank you so
See you
much.
guys.
See you, bud.
Yep.